Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending what time you're listening to this. You're listening to Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. Today's show, we have a truly interesting guest by the name of Jillian Godsill. Jillian's a writer, a politician, an advocate, and also a personal victim of the debt crisis and austerity. I know that you're going to find this a fascinating conversation. Now then, you may also notice that this is the first episode of Season 2. May play around with the graphics a little bit. I just sort of made a decision that 26 episodes was quite enough for a season. So this is the first episode of our second year. Please subscribe. Please feel free to share. And as I mentioned before, if you would like to share any of these interviews on your website, go right ahead. They're free for you to enjoy and share with your own readers and listeners. So for now, sit back, relax, fire up a podtini, and listen to the words as they fly through the air. We'll be right back. How are you today?
I'm very good indeed. Thank you, Hubert.
Fantastic. Now, I mentioned on the introduction that you have quite a story to tell.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, what would you like the listeners to know about you? That you had a nice, normal, middle-class life until your 30s, and then the walls came tumbling down. Would you like to take it from there?
And I would actually like to pay tribute, as you said. I had a really, really fabulous upbringing. I'm one of 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. Grew up in Dublin, and amazing parents. My father's dead now, my mother's still alive. Fabulous. Went to Trinity, then went and worked in London. Met my then husband, my love of my life at the time, and went off to Australia and Singapore. Had my first child in Singapore. Came home after about, I don't know, 10 or 12 years abroad. Settled in Dublin, and then moved down to the country then afterwards and bought a big huge house in the country, big huge ruin in the country. And I thought, that's grand. I'll kind of retire into the this is my life for the, I'm nearly done. I can see myself living there and having grandchildren there, and that's me cooked.
The manor house, absolutely, yeah.
But it didn't quite work out like that. And I obviously hadn't ticked the right boxes when I said, here am I planning my life. And one of the things that happened, which was quite funny, was when I was approaching my 40th birthday, I did have a little bit of a midlife crisis, if you like. And I suddenly went, well, 2 things happened. One, I went, hey, I haven't written my novel yet. I've been talking about writing my novel since I was a child, and I was engaged. I mean, I was a freelance journalist, and I was writing in PR and marketing. I did a lot of writing, but I hadn't written any books. So just as I was approaching my 40th birthday, I sat down and I wrote a children's book in about 2 weeks flat. Covered, about 40,000 words, 50,000 words. A lovely little story, really, really pretty, lovely and gorgeous. And I went, oh, that's great. Okay, I'm now in writing mode. But the other thing that happened to me as well as I was approaching 40, maybe just went over 40, sadly, the wheels came off my marriage. And that precipitated me into a whole new sort of ball game, because and I think anybody who's listening, who's gone through the whole divorce thing, you don't just tend to lose a husband, you tend to lose lots of other things.
Oh, well. Yes. Oh, yes. You divide assets.
It'd be great if you just divorced your husband.
Yeah. It's not just the house and the property. You divide the friends, you divide the family. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole shebang. And I was a bit unlucky that I hit divorce and the recession, the very bad recession in Ireland at the same time. And my one word of advice to any people out there is, do not get divorced in a recession. Oh dear, it was a bit disastrous. So things were limping along. We were in and out of courts, and very, very painful stuff. And then we agreed on a negotiation. In Ireland, the divorce law, it's only new and it's a bit dodgy because you have to get separated first, which sounds as if you're breaking apart, as in literally you yourself. and then it's a two-stage process, and then you get divorced a number of years later, which actually makes no sense because nobody ever goes from being separated going back into married again, I can assure you. But anyway, we became separated, and then my ex went back to the UK. And in the interim, while we had been married, I had a very successful business, and we had borrowed money, reasonable borrowings, in proportion to the sums that I was earning. But everything went belly up. And in a nutshell, we had an 800,000 mortgage on a house.
Right.
That's value was dropping from 1.65 million to around the time of the separation was down to about a million, lost about a third of its value. My ex went back to the UK and became bankrupt, and in essence gave all the debt to myself and our two children. And that meant then the house, I tried to sell the house and flying along, but sadly with the recession, the house dipped and dipped and dipped, and it was down to less than half its value.
Yeah.
And I was a bit worried that I'd moved out with my two children to a little cottage nearby, and I'd rented out the house, and then the drug squad decided to evict my last tenants. So, as it was a big country house, and obviously it was a great place to do also the dodgy growing stuff. It was a grow house essentially, and I couldn't rent it out again because it was messed up, because obviously people who are growing weed, they're growing it inside the house, so the house couldn't be rented out without a huge injection of capital, which I didn't have. So I made a video to try and sell the house, and the video, it went viral. It was mad. I was all over the place. I was all over, TV and all over Ireland. But then I went over to New York and the Huffington Post, the New York Times. It was crazy. And I got a cash offer from the banks to buy the house. Someone offered me 500,000. So the house had gone down to that price. And the banks refused consent to sell. So the following 2 years, they proceeded to chase me through the courts to repossess the house, which they did do. And then they sold it for 165,000.
So they took a 340,000 euro loss on it.
Well, everybody did at that stage. I mean, it made sense. It actually made no sense because they had a cash offer, and it's testament to the mess that Ireland was in. This is about 2010. It was testament to the mess that Ireland was in because everything was nosediving. The recession was hitting very, very hard. The banks hadn't a clue what they were doing, and they still don't, in my personal estimation. But that type of craziness, it continues. But for me, the hard thing was because I had gone famous with viral with the video for the 2 years until they finally took the house from me in the courts. I thought I might be able to rescue it, so I spent a lot of time trying to fight the banks, trying to find a business angel, try and do other things with the house, trying to sort out my own problems, whatever I could do.
Yeah.
But it actually had the adverse effect of my business then collapsed because of all the stress and the strain, and bailiffs came and knocked on my door, and oh my God, it was horrendous. And I do remember there was a period of about 6 months in 2012 where I was just what I would call a debt zombie. I had no hope. I don't know. The kids would go off to school at that stage, and then come back in. I think I'd be sitting in the same place where they left me, and I could jump up and go, oh, yes, let's cook dinner now, And I'd sat there staring at the screen, and I have no idea what I was doing all day. I just was a total mess. And I had no hope because, I don't know if you're aware or not, but in Ireland, the bankruptcy laws were at that stage incredibly punitive. They were 12 years, a period of punishment. And you might never leave bankruptcy if you couldn't actually get rid of your debts. You might never leave it. And then they brought in new laws around that time, and they reduced it to 3 years. But it's still 3 years is still too long. Plus, also they've said that if I get a job in the interim, like I've taken time off, I've done more education, done masters and stuff. But if I get a job, they'll take my salary for the following 5 years. So it's like
so what's the point? Yeah.
Exactly. It makes sense because bankruptcy should be, as it is in the US and other countries in the UK or neighbouring jurisdiction, it should be a mechanism for sorting out the mess when you have failed financially. It should be straightforward, and it should be, what are your assets, what are your debts, let's clean them all up, what can we do, can we give some money back to the creditors, yes, no, whatever, fine. And then start again with nothing, which is fine, but not don't work, because if you work, they'll take the money off you. And that's a big indictment of the Irish legal system in bankruptcy. It's still a punishing regime as opposed to a mechanism for release and letting people start again.
It's Dickensian in that that somehow you have sinned against finance, and you must pay penance for it, you know?
Yeah, and it's crazy because the old adage again is that people who are on the bottom level, and I grant it was a rather large mortgage that I had, but still people on the bottom level of society feel an overriding urge to try and repay it. But the higher up you go, they don't, and they just do deals. And so that there's a two-tier system in Ireland and the rest of the world. People who have a lot of money, people who have no money, and it's skewed, sorry, against the little person because you can't fight it, and you can't say, well, can I do a deal? Can I do something? You know, can I? They won't talk to you, they just blank you, and you're sort of left in this abyss. And part of that thing that I got very angry while this was happening to me, when I got my energies back again, and because you remember one time I met somebody, and a very nice woman, and I had a lot of time for her, and I was explaining to her about the debts and what I was going to do, whatever, and she turned around to me and she said, "Oh," she said, "when I was growing up," she said, "I was brought up to repay my debt." And I nearly fell off the chair looking at her going, did she think that I was brought up not to repay my debts? You know, and had a whole generation in Ireland and across the world suddenly morphed into the Artful Dodger. You know, it was like,
Oh yeah.
whoa.
Oh
And
yeah. It's the whole thing about neoliberalism that there it has so caused class and other forms of hatred that, well, for anybody who's not in debt or has a decent job, oh well, I'm morally pure, and it's those other people.
yes,
It's putting dividing lines through society so that rather than wealthy, poor, that it it gets warped into morally good, morally bad, which is
yes.
utterly wrong.
Because there's a couple of things going on. I feel this very passionately, and I'll explain what I did with it afterwards, but I feel very importantly because it's like as if when you fail financially, I kept saying, I haven't committed a crime. I haven't defrauded anybody. I haven't gone out maliciously to take that money with the pure intention of not paying it back. You know, I was growing my business, I was doing different bits and pieces, but, you know, it's not failing financially is not a moral issue. And I think that's something that people have to get over. And also, financial success is largely a question of timing. Because had
Sure.
Mike and I got divorced 5 years earlier, we would have come out of it with loads of money. People would have said, "Oh, weren't we very good business people?" Forget about the divorce. You know, it's timing is a big issue when it comes to how you succeed financially. Whether you borrow in a difficult period or in a good period, or your business collapse, whatever happens. And sometimes there are things that are bigger than individuals that influence how they come out. And and again, you can no more blame someone for being born at the wrong time or selling at the wrong time. That's not a moral thing. That's a not very much fun thing when it happens, you know. But anyway, I felt very passionately about this, and as it happened, you know, I said my video went a bit viral. Then I went a little bit viral because my story was kind of like, you know, poor woman, you know, left behind with the the house and the mortgage, and then with the banks not agreeing to consent, and the ex going back and giving all, you know, the discrepancies between the laws between the UK and Ireland and all this stuff. And I began to talk a lot on television and radio and print, and I'm very honest in my opinions. And the more I thought about it, I'm kind of like a slow burner. So I got more and more angry about, sorry, this is not I'm not morally culpable for what I've done, in the sense that I've always worked extremely hard, and I will hopefully always work extremely hard. And I certainly did not mean to defraud anybody or anything like that. And anyways, it happened when the banks finally took my house. I had the 800,000 mortgage plus arrears on it. It's an unsecured loan at that stage. And then what happened was I tried to enter the new bankruptcy laws that I mentioned, but I
Right.
was too broke to enter the regular bankruptcy laws, and I had to go full bankrupt. I couldn't take the insolvency process. I had to go fully bankrupt. So I was the first female bankrupt under the new laws. And oh, it's a nice medal to have on my desk, whatever. First female bankrupt. Oh, cool.
They'll
And
build
then,
a statue. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yes, I think that I'm sure my grandchildren will love that. Then what happened was I discovered that as a bankrupt, there's a lot of things you're not allowed to do, which is fair enough. I'm not allowed to be, you know, a director of a company, you know, different things. And I wasn't allowed to run for public office. And I went, oh, this is wrong, because again, I've done nothing morally or criminally wrong, so why shouldn't I have run for public office? And so I brought the government to the High Court, and I said my constitutional rights were being infringed. And at first they put up a really strong, robust defence, and they were, oh, They were fighting and saying, oh, it's the horrible stuff. It was like my divorce all over again. It was horrible. And then I think they realized they were on a hiding to nothing. So they rushed through the law. And of course, all parties and government all agree, because it was stupid. We'd inherited the law from the UK, actually, funnily enough. And previous patriots, Irish patriots, had been forced into bankruptcy and to leave positions of election because of it. Anyway, they rushed through the law, and they changed it in time for me to run for Europe.
Yes.
So
the European Parliament, yes.
So then I had to run for Europe. So I had about 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, and I had no money, and I had no party. I was independent, obviously, and I ran for Europe, and I had the most wonderful 4 weeks. It was amazing. I'd never done anything political before in my entire life. I was running in Ireland South. It's a huge constituency, and I ran around all this. I did mostly PR and marketing and social media, and it was a mad period, because when you're running for Europe in particular, everybody wants to know where you stand on everything. So
oh yeah, yeah.
I had to form opinions on trade embargoes, on sustainable issues, on women's issues, on education issues. I was like, oh my God, I don't even know what I think on half these things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Google became my best friend as I tried to find out what are the pros and cons to all the different things that I had. You might have a passing interest in, but you certainly didn't have strong views on. And anyway, it was a wonderful time. I did all the TV and did everything, and I ended up with 11,500 votes, and I was very, very proud of that. Now, of course, it was nowhere near enough to get me elected, but I ran what I would consider sort of a pure heart campaign, very much on the side of the people in debt, and also on the side of Ireland, because we had inherited, because of the bank guarantee and the Troika, 64 billion euros worth of debt.
Yes.
And given that we're only like 1% of the European Union, it was way out of all proportion. It wasn't our debt, and as it's the last year, it's coming out more and more that there's no way we were bullied. The Irish people were bullied into taking that debt, and I wanted to go to Europe to kick up a stink and basically ask it for the debt to be renegotiated. That was my plan. But anyway, I had a great time, and I didn't get elected. That was okay too, and then I segued in, because I wasn't quite sure what to do at that stage. And then, because of all the stuff, no job, no business, no whatever, I went off and I did a master's degree in screenwriting for the year, which was wonderful, because I got my sort of mental health back again, and it was great to have a purpose in life. And that wasn't, it was just me. I was like, me, this is all about me, which is quite fun. And I finished that, and that's where I'm at now in terms of my life. So... Is that?
Oh yeah. Oh, so it's a nice, simple story. But
exactly.
While you were doing your masters and so forth, how were you surviving?
Well, I ended up going on social welfare, because
Right.
when the business collapsed, the last year of my business, I had one other woman, a fantastic friend, who working with me, a Spanish girl, Galician girl. We worked very well together. We did some great stuff. We did some very powerful stuff. But in the recession, I found by the end of the year, I had paid Maria, but I hadn't paid myself any money.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I couldn't even pay Maria. That was a killer. And I had to close up. And I came back. And at that stage, although I was self-employed law for social welfare is very dodgy, very hard to get it. But I managed to get, first of all, a job seeker's allowance, which was 200 a week. And then I migrated over back onto a start your own business scheme, which I'm on at the moment. Again, it's down to 150 a week, so it's not huge money. I don't eat out much,
Yeah.
but it's. I have to say, you think about in some countries like in the US, where your social welfare runs out. I don't know. That is so scary. And now, as it happens, mine runs out next July because of the scheme I'm on. But I really do hope to be. And actually, it's a funny scheme, because you're allowed to earn money and collect your social. So I'm doing freelance journalism at the moment and writing, but I have to get myself sorted properly by next July, because that stops. I'm not really thinking about that at the moment.
So let's talk about the journalism and the writing. You mentioned children's books. You also had a novel, Running Out of Road, that came out in, I think, 2010, right?
Yeah, that was my novel of my divorce, because when I was going for freedom, and I was getting freedom in my life and all that stuff, and my writing, and I started writing this novel called Running Out of Road, and I love it. It's it's a gorgeous novel. It's such fun, and I had such fun writing it, and it took me the guts of like 2 or 3 years, I think, actually, to write it. It just took a long time. And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I really like it. I think it's just beautiful. And on the strength of it, now, I mean, it's actually, I self-published it on Lulu, so and on Kindle too as well. I loved it so much. And I don't think it's commercially viable. But it's like one of those first books that you write, which you should really put under your bed and never see the light of day. But of course, in today's modern technology, I said, oh, no, I'm going to publish it. And it was, having that book in my hand was just beautiful. It was just, I'd say, all the things that had gone wrong in my life. But I'm going, oh, I've written my first novel. Oh my God, it's so fantastic. And I did get my literary agent, Jonathan Williams. I sent it to him, and he liked it. He liked it enough to see the potential in me. So, and he's a pretty serious guy. He looks after mostly literary non-fiction authors in Ireland, and he looks after Michael D. Higgins and Vincent Brown, and he did Ivan Yates's book, and Sue Leonard, all her books. He does her books, and he does lots of very, 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 very good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a wonderful experience again, because the children's book was one thing, but writing what I consider a grown-up book, because people say when you write, you have to write and think, you have to pretend your parents are dead. To write like your parents are dead. Because some of the things you want to write, especially if you want to address adult themes or anything like that, or if you have, like, the mother character in Running Out of Road is horrible. Now, my father is there, but my mother is well alive and doing hale and hearty at 84, and my mother is a wonderful, wonderful woman. But it was quite funny. I think the divorce made me brave, because I had a whole bunch of experiences I didn't really expect to. They weren't very pleasant, but it gave me that bravery to go out and write this horrible character and tell my mum, because my mum finally read it a couple of years ago. She said, I didn't really like it. I said, no, I don't think you would really like it, Mum. But I said, it's not you. As long as the mother is not you, and Mum, being sensible, obviously knows it's not her.
Oh,
but that was a nice education thing.
So now you've turned to thinking women's erotica. Would you care to define?
I should say, between that and writing things women erotica, I did two other things. I wrote a book of just a collection of essays that I was more blogs, and I put them into an essay, and I had fun writing that. It was just a year in my life, 2012 I think it was, and I called it Does My Debt, as in DBT, Look Big in This? And that was kind of fun. I did it for charity. This is kind of essay, and it charts my progress from being wide-eyed, bunny-tailed, fluffy-eared, newly divorcee, thinking I'm going to be grand, to the end of the year going, oh, I am actually very broke. And that thing, you kind of go, oh, is this all really happening? And a lot of them there was some very painful times too as well. And I wanted to talk about the pain of going broke, which is, again, I said earlier, I'm not ashamed of failing financially, but it is very, very, very tough. Very, very tough. And I wanted to write about that whole experience. I did that. But anyway, as part of that too, I mentioned earlier that I did a lot of radio and TV and stuff like that. I kept on doing radio and TV because anytime they wanted a broke person in Ireland, they dragged me out. And I ended up doing Russian TV and Belgian TV, and I was on with Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight and on BBC, and I was on NPR, did a piece on me on radio, and I was doing loads. At least Al Jazeera covered me as well. It was all the stuff that was...
Ireland's face of debt.
Exactly. I know. It's such a nice thing, isn't it?
Oh, yes, yes.
My grandchildren will be so proud of me. But I remember in the beginning of 2013, I believe it was, we were exiting the bailout in Ireland. And there was a huge talk that, oh, isn't it great how we're, getting back on our feet again, whatever. But in reality, and no more than now as the economy starts to recover, the reality for many, many people is that they've been hurt so badly in the recession, there is no recovery, and not now, and it would be a long time before they recover. Because at the moment, you've probably been following the news, there are like 70 families becoming homeless every month in Ireland. 70. And these are new families. These aren't people who are traditionally homeless. There's a coterie of people who fall through the cracks for different reasons, dysfunctional families, abuse, addictions, whatever. Those are things that you expect in a society, and that happens. And not that it's horrible, but it's there. It exists in all societies. But of these families that are hitting the homelessness now, these are normal people who've just lost their jobs, and who kids. It's very, very, very scary. But in 2013, again, there was a hype that, oh, we're exiting the bailout, and I was approached by two production houses. One was a Belgian, and one was a German. and they both wanted to do pan-European documentaries. And they were starting off with with Japan, sorry, at the fall of the Asian tiger, Japanese tiger, and then they're going to work right across Europe, and they're going to finish with Ireland. But Ireland was going to be a poster country for austerity, and Ireland was supposed to be successful in coming out because our government done a very good job of saying how happy we all were with taking on all this debt, man, woman, and child. It didn't belong to us, and giving it to our grandchildren's grandchildren. We done a very good public, sort of spin doctoring thing, whereas in actual fact, people were not happy. So I made this point very strongly to these two researchers. And what happened was, both of them, they dropped me from the programs. I didn't mind, because I was never paid for this stuff anyway. I was just talking, ranting and raving as per usual. But then they both dropped Ireland from their programs. And I think it was the Belgian researcher in particular said to me, that's not how our storyboard is written. I went, what? He said, yeah,
right.
We're not going to use Ireland anymore. And I was horrified, really, really, really horrified, because I thought, so everybody thinks that Ireland is happy and austerity. I mean, austerity just doesn't work. We know that if you have an anorexic child, you don't starve them to make them better. I mean, economists the world over, austerity cannot grow an economy. It doesn't work like that.
True enough.
And we're force-fed the idea that we have to take our punishment and our haircut and all that, but it doesn't actually work. And
there's that whole ridiculous, quote-unquote, moral argument. Again, it's like what Greece is still going through. Oh, well, you overspent, so you must be punished now.
Yeah.
What? Bloody hell. Or what Jeremy Corbyn is going through from the quote-unquote left-wing press, like The Guardian and so forth, just hates Corbyn, because he's saying that austerity doesn't work. Oh, no, quiet. We like austerity. Well, you're not actually being faced by its injuries, are you? Pardon me, I rant every now and then.
Yeah, well, I rant and rave a lot about this, and it's just like it's all the economists sort of line up, but they're only because they're being paid. It's because of the flight of money to the super elite, and we see that the world over, and it's frightening. We're creating a new aristocracy, and it's even worse because the old aristocracy, as in several hundred years ago, who inherited all the wealth and the money around the place, I would argue they had more of a noblesse oblige than the self-made aristocracy, the new ones are making, because they're going, well, we made our money, you make your money, not realizing that unless you're born the right color, creed, skin tone, gender, and in the right neighborhood, your chances of making it are significantly less now than they were even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And so you can't say, oh, well, you can make, because the privilege, it exists, that white privilege that goes, across the whole rig things, it exists, and it exists in spades nowadays. So even the traditional middle class areas, they don't really exist anymore, and it's very hard for anybody to get out of the pool at the bottom. It's horrendous. So I think we probably agree on this.
Oh yeah, we are on the same page, Jillian. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's scary. So anyway, this was happening, and at the time I was going to write a non-fiction book about my divorce, because I had a very painful divorce apart from everything else, and I wanted to write about it because I just thought, God, if you had no idea, it's like, I think once you are divorced you have an idea, or once you've lost your home, or once you've fallen in love, if you haven't done many of the things, you've no idea what they're like until you do it. Unless you've had a child, it's hard to comprehend that whole existence, whatever. So I was going to write the story about divorce in order to try and help, because divorce laws are relatively new in Ireland, and it's still frowned upon quite a lot still. There's still quite a stigma associated with it in Ireland. So I wanted to write a book about that. But when all this happened, I had to make money. So this is going back to your earlier question.
Yeah.
A long loop back to, that's when I segued into, I'm going to write a sex book. And then I'm not going to write just one sex book. I'm going to write 3 sex books. I'm going to write a trilogy, because that's what you do. And then, because I was afraid, there's only one thing worse than writing a sex book, and that's writing a bad sex book. So that's first of all why I had nom de plume. I had Aoife Brennan. And secondly, what I did was I put all my angst and all my ranting and raving and all the things that I was thinking about, about divorce in Ireland, about the banks, about financially inspired suicides, about the unfairness of it. I put them into my erotica. And so at the end of the day, it's now, I love to call it, I'm very proud of it, because it's feminist, activist, comic erotica, or thinking woman's erotica.
I love it. I love it. So, what's a plot line and the overall title of the trilogy is the Cougar Diaries, right?
I dumbed down on the title. And actually, I had lined up a title from Dickens, I Begin the World. It's a line that's used at the end of Bleak House. And I thought it's a wonderful line where this character, I forget the guy's name, is one of the wards, he's dying. And as he's dying, I begin the world. And it's not this world, of course, but the next. And it's a very moving passage in the end of the novel. I thought, that's what I want to call it. But sadly, as you might imagine, there's lots of theology-based books called I Begin the World. And I thought, maybe a sex book, maybe it's not such a good title. I might get mixed up or something.
Well, I don't know. It might be an enlivening experience for someone who thinks they're buying the life of Saint Anthony or something, and they open up. And the heaving bosom. Oh, well, here we are then. What are you doing, Alfred? Oh, I'm reading about St. Anthony.
So I had to ditch the highbrow attempt at, being very sanctimonious. And then I went I did it with some friends of women were out one night, and they said, oh, the Cougar Diaries, definitely, Jill. So it's a story I wrote in the first person. It is totally fictional. However, I did take my life and put it through the fiction mill because,
as one does, yes.
And I took there's lots of bits in it. Like my daughters have both read it, the first book anyway. And one of my youngest daughters said, she was only 16 at the time. I said, are you sure? She said, no, I want to read it. I want to read it. I said, okay. She had also read 50 Shades, so I said, this is better than 50 Shades anyway. And when she got after, she said, Mum, she said, there's only one problem with it. She said, you stolen chunks of my life and put it in there.
Oh, good times. And so you found out a lot more about your daughter than perhaps you cared to know.
And I mean, I'd converted my character as a 40-year-old woman, living in Dublin, divorcing with 2 children. I made them 2 boys, of course. But there's a lot of things that are similar, a lot of feelings and emotions. And actually, one thing, the bit that she picked up on, when her dad now lives back in the UK, and she sees him about once a year, whatever. But when she was back from seeing him, she came back when she was about 15, I think, whatever. And she said, Mum, she said, when I'm with Dad, I don't like you very much. When I'm with you, I don't like Dad very much. And I thought, oh my God, it hit me like a sledgehammer. I thought, that is so true. Because regardless of anything, he's her father and I'm her mother, and that's never going to change. And no matter what goes on in a divorce or anything like that, or who lives with whom, I was a bit disgruntled and going, you live with me 24/7, 365 days of the year. You could be a bit nicer to me, But it's a very true thing. So I put that in there. And then she said, Mum, that's a direct quote from me. And I said, whoops.
So do I have to pay royalties, kid? Yeah.
I know. I think I owe her a few bob. But what I did have fun though, what I did do as well, which is quite funny, and people say to me, how did you research? Because they are quite graphic. I have to admit,
I didn't have the balls to ask that one.
Well, on the one hand, I feel like saying, I have a very good imagination. Or on the other hand, I might say, well, I had a great time doing it, and that's it, zip.
Yeah.
and you know what? It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, because I was dating again, and because after 16 years of marriage, it's quite scary going out there and dating. And when you date men, as Cindy Gallop, do you know Cindy Gallop?
No, I don't know.
A make love, not porn woman. Very interesting lady. She's an ad lady, English ad lady living in New York, very, very high profile, and has done quite a few things. She's very famous for her TED talk on make love, not porn, where she talked about the impact of porn on Generation Y, because as it happened, she was a single lady in her late 40s dating, and she ended up dating younger men and discovered firsthand the direct impact of how the young men, they had been educated watching porn. So their behavior emulated what they saw on screen. And she gave some examples, I won't go into now, they're quite graphic. But you're going, whoa, why are you doing this? And the guys are going, isn't that what girls like?
I saw it in the movies. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and especially because they're watching porn. So it's obviously, it's not real life at all. But obviously, if you grow up on it, it's the de facto sex educator for Generation Y. No, but she was quite interesting too. I've interviewed her before, very interesting. But yes, it meant that I was as a 40-year-old woman, mid-40s, early 40s, sorry, going out and dating again. And, you know, if you're dating again, obviously I'm going to have carnal knowledge of the men that I was dating. And that's quite scary when you've 16 years with one man and then you meet young people, you know, and new people, strangers. Well, not strangers, obviously you're dating them, but
Yeah, right.
very scary. So I did do some research.
Yeah. Good on you.
That was a lot of fun.
Oh, fantastic. Now, let's see, the portion of the show that I call advertisements for myself. How do people find you on the internet, find the books, get in touch with you, that kind of thing?
I'm going to tell you, but I want to tell you one other story too as
Oh,
well.
please do. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm on Kindle. I'm on Amazon. It's The Cougar Diaries by Aoife Brennan, and they're on Smashwords. And if you, there are a lot of, they're on. There's different Nook and, you know, other ones too as well. That they're available online. I also put them up on CreateSpace, so you can get, you know, hard copies. If a hard copy is your thing, you can actually order. They're a bit more expensive than regular books because they print on demand. I think they're about $15 plus post and package, whatever. So they're available there. And say Aoife Brennan is the pen name, and Cougar Diaries, and they're hard copies and ebooks. But you know what's very interesting was that you know, I said I put all my activist stuff in there, all the stuff about, well, you know, it wasn't just Aoife Brennan and her life, what she was facing. And they're very funny when men read them too as well, because they're not like Barbara Cartland bodice rippers. They're actually very real books, and people read them. The men read them because they can identify with them. And then they get to the erotic stuff and they go, oh my God. They never realize that you could get very turned on by a book, you know. Most men don't use books for that type of stuff. And but what was interesting was that I had it turned out I created a second profile, an Aoife Brennan social media profile, and I got chatting as Aoife Brennan to this retired Texan IBM engineer, and he was chatting away, whatever, and it was so funny. I love this. Last 2 years ago, our Prime Minister was over at was it Davos? Was it Davos, the financial summit? And it was a Bloomberg report anyway, and Enda Kenny was talking about some of the problems. He was, you know, admitting that there were some problems, you know, in Ireland. And this chap, who didn't know me from Adam, but he'd read my books, but he didn't know who I was or anything like that, said, oh, I said, I've just seen the Irish Prime Minister talking at Davos. He touches on points, you know, about the Ireland, the problem, whatever, touches on points made in the Cougar Diaries. Thought, yes, this American has learned about Ireland from my erotica. And that's how you make the medicine go down, you make it sweetener. And it turns out himself and his wife, they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and they weren't quite sure where to go. So they flew over to Ireland, and I met them, lovely couple, really, really very genuine and sweet. And based on the fact that, because he's interested in, he's a German background in his background, but it was just so funny that they decided to come to Ireland rather than to Germany, because he'd read about the books, he'd read about Ireland, it was so interesting. And following up from that, a very good friend of mine, who is a Gaeilgeoir, an Irish speaker, an Irish writer, she has translated some of my books, some short stories in advance. They're kind of attached to the first book, and she's translated them into Irish. So I'm now trying to encourage a new generation to learn Irish so they can look for the naughty bits. And that's also available in English and Irish on the Amazon as well.
I've been trying my damnedest to learn Irish, so this may be better than the RTE course.
I think so. I'm calling it Peg with Sex. And for those people who are old enough to remember, everybody in Ireland Irish is compulsory. And there was this book called Peg, and it was set about this woman. Her nephew, I think, had transcribed her story. She lived in the Blasket Islands, and it was in the 1800s. And all she saw was emigration of the coffin ships, which like today's ships, with the Irish during the famine, and eating loads of potatoes and cabbage and all the wakes, and it was compulsory. You had to read, you had to study it in school, and of course everybody hated it. It was a wonderful book, of course, but because it was compulsory, everybody hated it. So I'm calling my books now Peg with Sex. She probably turned her grave if she heard me.
So how do people find you on the internet, Jillian?
Okay, well, if you Google again, if you go onto Amazon and Google Aoife Brennan, The Cougar Diaries.
Right.
Now, if you want to find me, it's Jillian Godsill, and I have my blog where I rant and rave a lot about injustice, social issues, and quirky bits too as well. And that's my JillianGodsill.com is my own blog. And I'm a freelance journalist with the Independent Group here, so I write about different things, and things that catch my interest, things that make me mad, injustice, social issues, those things very much forefront of my mind often. And they say, and the books and the Running Out of Road, that's only for people who like me. I wouldn't necessarily ask anyone else to buy it.
Oh, fantastic. And Jillian, anytime you want to come back on the show and talk about whatever,
Whatever.
the time is yours. You've been a fabulous guest. Thank you ever so much for doing Thoughts, Comments, Opinions.
It was a great pleasure. It's very hard. I have an off button someplace, Hubert. One of these days, someone will discover it, and I'll be very politely quiet for a bit.
No. Hey, I love a guest where I get to say, "How are you?" and then I go off. I make tea. I have a sandwich. I come back, and thanks so much for joining us. On that happy note, have a fabulous day, Jillian. Cheers.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Jillian Godsill once again for being our guest today on Thoughts, Comments, Opinions. I look forward to any comments you have. You can email me at hlohearn@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on our YouTube channel or the various other places that this podcast has appeared. As well, if you have an idea for a guest, I don't care if it's an author, a politician, an artist, an athlete, anybody who has an interesting story to tell, please let me know, because I would love to hear from you. In the meanwhile, I hope that you support us at our Patreon page, www.patreon, that's Patreon, www.patreon.com/thoughts-comments-opinions, so we can keep these podcasts free and send out stories of interest. But for now, thank you to Kira Donnelly for the music that accompanies our show. And from all of us who work the late shift here in Ireland, good night, everybody. Be seeing you.